Welcome to Go Bucks. It is a beautiful Friday right before football Saturday. I know this Saturday is not going to be quite as awesome as last Saturday. We still have Michigan at Oklahoma, but Brian, I know we haven't had a chance to really talk about the Texas and Ohio State game from last week. I know that's kind of old news at this point. It's a week old, but I have to say I owe Julian Sayin an apology. A public apology, because I totally read a book by its cover. The guy looks like he's about 11 years old, and he actually played a lot better than I thought he would. He was pretty composed, and he threw a lot of good balls. I mean, none that were like wowed you necessarily, but he was solid. What did you take from all that? I'm sure you're happy.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it was a conservative game plan. Very a defensive game. I figured it was going to be a low scoring game because you had two inexperienced quarterbacks. Going up against two of the best defenses in the country, and I thought that they had a good plan for Julian, and they did just enough in the run game to help him. What's crazy is that the receivers, especially early on, I mean, Jeremiah Smith dropping balls, Max
Rough.
Clare dropping a big ball. They didn't help him out. But I will say the offensive line was also better than as good as I thought they might be. So I was very pleased with that. And but yeah, I thought Julian Sayin did some really nice things. I think he's a very accurate guy. I was really impressed that even when he was pressed, he did a good job of not of taking care of the football. Number one
Yep.
thing when you have a quarterback is do no harm, especially in a big game. With Bryce Underwood obviously going to Oklahoma this week. Tough test for the kid. The number one thing he needs to do is do no harm. So that's the number one thing. I thought that the game played out where he didn't have to do too much, but when he had to, he made some really nice plays. And so
He did.
yeah, I'm very encouraged. I know that they will start to open up the offense. I think even Ryan Day acknowledged that he can handle more than they gave him, and so that's really encouraging. And I'm excited to see where he ends up. I mean, he's definitely a he's not the physical specimen that Bryce Underwood is, but he's a ball placement wizard. And I think you're starting to see that, and he can process pretty quickly too. So there's definitely some things I'm a little bit concerned about with Ohio State, but overall, you got to be happy with the way the defense played, that the quarterback looks like a guy, and the fact that the offensive line looks pretty good. The skill positions are going to be solid. So yeah, it was a great
Yeah.
win. Really happy, and I think that win definitely solidifies Ohio State as a playoff team.
Yeah, and it's funny because Julian, I watched all his throws, and so he threw a lot of good balls, a lot of dropped passes by the receivers,
Yes,
but
yes,
ironically, his worst pass, I think, might have been the deep ball to Carnell Tate, because Carnell Tate had to slow down on that. Like it was underthrown, and he ended up having to catch it twice to get that touchdown. I thought that was ironic, kind of funny that the worst ball he threw, they actually
yeah,
caught. It was for
yeah. I
a
think the
touchdown.
the only thing I would say about that one is, especially with a young quarterback in that situation, the one thing you don't want to do is overthrow. When you have a deep shot like that, you don't want to overthrow it. And especially if it's one-on-one, you trust your guy to go up and at least on a 50-50 ball, make a play. So I can kind of understand. I'm not saying he intentionally underthrew it. I'm just saying in the grand scheme of things. And of course, it's easy to be, Monday morning quarterback and say, well, it worked out great. But you'd rather in that situation actually hang it up a bit. Now, if you're throwing into, if you got safety help coming over the top, that's a different situation. But in that case, Jeremiah Smith took the safety, and he had two vertical routes there. It was just a matter of whichever way the safety went. And of course, 9 times out of 10, Smith is going to draw the coverage. But I thought he did very, very well, and I'm excited to see how the season shakes out.
Were you surprised that Arch missed as many layups as he did and was overall the least impressed? Like I thought I was going to be much more impressed with Arch, but I never guessed that. I thought he'd have a hard time in the shoe, first start and all, totally
Sure.
understandable. But the missing of all the layups that he did, I mean, I didn't count them, but it seemed like every time a short just a short throw, a gimme throw to an open receiver, and he just couldn't even connect on it. It's
If
very
you
odd.
looked, yeah, and I think it's a good point. And I think if you looked at the resumes coming in and the hype coming in, and you looked at just the mechanics of the two quarterbacks and didn't see the name on the back of the jersey, you would 100% think that Julian Sayin was the higher rated quarterback because his mechanics were so much cleaner. His ball strikes were just so much cleaner and more consistent. I was very surprised that Manning looked that bad. Now, of course, they had a great game plan, and I will say, like, I think we're getting to the point where Sarkisian's offense is getting very, very predictable, very predictable. And there was no doubt that Ohio State knew exactly what was coming and had a great game plan for him. And then, part of that is they did a lot of what Georgia has done to Texas in terms of how you deal with the fronts to stop the outside zone running. And they, not that Texas did run the ball pretty effectively, but it was mainly between the tackles and it was mainly in the second half. But that the crowd definitely helped, and the fact that Ohio State can do so many things, like what they show you pre-snap is almost never what they're in post-snap. And because you have versatile defenders like Caleb Downs, and now you've got a guy like Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, and these guys who are just freakazoids that can be anywhere. They could be a defensive end, they could be a middle linebacker, they could be in coverage. Good luck. Have fun.
Yeah. But you know what? You're probably right about Sarkisian because he was scheming guys open, but it was short. He wasn't scheming his receivers open like in like mid to deep. Like they weren't open back there.
Well, even when they were like
shallow,
yeah.
But it wasn't as good. So, and I'm so glad that I did not pick on the air. I did not pick Texas to win because I was tempted to do that just from the hater in me. The hater in me.
Sure.
But you're right. I kept thinking about those Georgia games last year. Texas lost to Georgia twice. And that, I know you can't play the Kevin Bacon game with football, but Georgia lost to Notre Dame. Like they beat Texas twice and lost to Notre Dame. Like, so that triggered something in my brain to say, nah, I don't think they're going into the horseshoe and winning for some reason.
But I think your point is valid, and I do kind of tend to agree with some of the chatter that I heard that, if Quinn Ewers is starting for Texas in that game, Texas probably wins, or at least forces Ohio State to play more wide open than they did,
or at least connect some gimme passes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That he had. Oh my God,
Manning's
lead to more when you miss.
You
those,
can kind of
demoralizing.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you a better idea why Ewers was starting over him last year. A lot of people were calling for Arch, and I don't think he was ready. And based on what we've seen so far, I don't know that you can guarantee Texas is going to be a playoff team unless they get better play from the quarterback. So
never would have thought that would have been the case.
Nah, exactly.
Need better quarterback play from Arch.
But I'll tell you who's got better quarterback play, and you have to be excited about is Bryce Underwood, Michigan. I mean, Bryce he looks like a dude. Yeah. He looks like a dude, and I'm again, I love ball. Of course, I hate Michigan, but I love ball, and he's fun to watch. Like he's fun to watch. My son and I, my son's an aspiring high school quarterback, and so we watch a lot of high school film, and we were actually watching some of his stuff in high school, and I didn't realize just how athletic that kid really is. But he's not just a Cam Newton type athlete. He can throw the ball, he can spin it, and yeah. So he's really exciting. And the really cool thing I like is, obviously Michigan's going to have a good game plan to try to run the ball and protect their quarterback. They're not going to ask them to throw it 40 times.
Oh gosh.
But the one thing that I really like about Bryce Underwood that's going to put a lot of stress on defenses is he can roll out to either side. A lot of young quarterbacks especially cannot really challenge different levels of the defense if they're rolling out, like a right-handed quarterback rolling to the left can't necessarily make the throws, but he can. And I know I'd love to get into this deeper, but I don't have a lot of time. But the one thing I would say, this is going to be a fun quarterback matchup because you've got Bryce Underwood, who looks like a dude, and John Mateer, who's he's inconsistent, but he's fun. He's a gunslinger, and that guy will make plays. Yep. And it is going to be fun to see if, we always know with Brett Venables, or at least we think the Brett Venables defense is going to be solid. We know Michigan's going to bring a solid defense. run game and defense travel, but this is a big test for Michigan. And I think if Michigan wins, you got to start thinking this team might actually be a playoff team.
Oh, get ready for the hype train if Michigan actually wins this. I'm not calling for Michigan to win this. I think it'll be a really, really close game, and Michigan absolutely could win this game. But it just depends, because Michigan, at least in the past, with their type of offense, they can't get behind by too much. And John Mateer is the type of guy who could really slice and dice them if he has a good game. So I'm a little worried about that, but real excited.
It'd be a great test. Yeah, absolutely. And it's early enough in the season that even if they lose, they still have a good chance. And it's a great learning experience for a young quarterback. But I just think, man, the future is so bright for that kid. And he, for the first time, especially watching what you guys had to watch last year with basically no quarterback play whatsoever. I think that kid gives you a puncher's chance, even as a freshman, even if you get behind a couple scores. If he had to do it on his own or make plays in the pass game, like he's going to miss some easy throws. He's going to make some mistakes. He's going to turn the ball over, because that's what young guys do. But if you're a young quarterback, I think playing in a system like Michigan does is ideal, because they're going to try. They have a philosophy that they're going to try to protect you as much as possible. And you're always going to have tight ends. You're going to have, the quarterback's best friend is hit the tight end or check it down to the backs, and they're always going to have solid guys. And I can't wait to see this. I really get excited about this kid.
I know it is. And like Michigan, as far as their offense goes, they are definitely going to run the ball. And I think when they go out to Oklahoma, I think they will be able to run the ball. But I guess it's always interesting, because there's like this thought process that Michigan doesn't need a good quarterback with their offense. But I think any team that wants to challenge for the national title, it doesn't matter what kind of offense you run. Even if it's Michigan's, you absolutely need a superstar quarterback to run it, even if they're not putting up superstar stats like JJ McCarthy, because you can't go in with Davis Warren, because look at the contrast in quarterback talent from last year to this year for Michigan.
Absolutely. Your guy has to be able to make plays, man. If you look back even to Michigan, like when they lost to TCU, I would argue that JJ McCarthy was TCU's best player. The 2 pick sixes basically lost that game. When you look at what he did his senior year, he was much, much better. When you look at like this past week, you look at the LSU Clemson game. Those are 2 of the best quarterbacks in college football, and Nussmeier made the plays, and Klubnik couldn't do it. Now, granted, you need to be able to play complementary football around him, and especially when you got a younger guy, you got to get some run game. But Michigan's been able to run the ball, even in games when they haven't been prolific with it. They're still going to be committed to it as long as they can stay close. And so I'm with you. I would be really, really excited. And I'm not saying I would not pick a young quarterback going into a place like Norman this early in his career and winning, but I wouldn't put it past them to be able to do it. So
we'll see.
It's going to be fun, man.
It depends on if they can keep it close and to do what Michigan always does. And if they can get, if they can have a 3-point lead in the fourth quarter, they can start running out the clock, essentially.
Yeah.
That's just basically what they do. If they can really keep it close even and get up in the fourth quarter, they can start running the ball, because it didn't look like, and I'm sure you probably, I don't know if you've watched at all what Oklahoma did last week, but they weren't great against the run, even against the FCS team. So
right.
I know those.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a big deal. And if they can't run the ball, Mateer, and it's all on Mateer's shoulders, I would like my chances as a Michigan fan for sure.
Such a baller, though. He can run the ball.
Yeah, he is. He is really well, and he's a veteran guy. He's played a lot of football, but he also can be mechanically inconsistent, and he can make mistakes. He can get, he is a little bit of a riverboat gambler. He can put the ball where he doesn't need to put it. But I would still pick, if I had to pick it, I would pick Oklahoma only because they're at home and it's the first real test for Underwood. But I think that kid's going to be a problem. And man, I can't wait for November. That game is going to be just crazy, buddy. It's going to be crazy.
So. Michigan. So what do you think? Like, just based on like the first week and the makeup of the teams of Michigan and Ohio State, what do you think that's going to look like at the end of the year? I know we can't do a lot because it's just week one, but it seems like their offensive philosophies are very much the same, probably 2023 almost.
Well,
But
I
Ohio
think
State quarterback than 2023 with Kyle McCord. But what do you think about the makeup of the team you're looking at there?
yeah,
Like, who do you think has the advantage? Like,
it's going to be hard. You're going to have two again. You're going to have two young. Now, granted, it'll be the end of the year, so it's not like they're it's not here at the beginning, but you still got two inexperienced guys. Julian Sayin's it's going to be a huge test, probably his biggest test on the road. That team is going to have to be better. Now, I'm excited about Ohio State's defense. I think the offensive line looks pretty darn good. So I'm excited about that. But, we'll see. I don't know how explosive they're going to be in the run game. I'm worried about that because we don't have Travion Henderson and Quinton Judkins. That's apparent. Whether that ends up being a freshman like Bo Jackson, I don't know. There's a lot to be determined there.
You don't have a Travion, that's for sure, because every time I see a running back in the open field, I comparing them in my head to Travion, and nobody has Travion speed. So it's unfair. No. He's gone. But you might have a Judkins. I don't know. I mean, Peoples might be a Judkins, mid-year, something like that.
I'm just telling you, like Judkins' vision was really special, and I don't know that either one of these guys have that yet. Now, granted, it's early, but and I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said about how good is Michigan's defense really? How good are they? Can they get explosives? We don't know that. So a lot of unknowns. So we'll know a lot more when we get to November. If they win this Oklahoma game,
it's on. If they win,
it's on.
It's a hype.
Yeah, man, it's on.
Big Ten and Ohio State and Michigan. It's going to be brutal.
I would say if they win this game and things play out the way that they could play out this year, we might be saying more than one Ohio State-Michigan game this year.
Ooh,
I'll say that.
I don't know if that would be good or not. I don't know.
I don't either. But I'm excited. No, but especially look as an Ohio State fan who fully, I think I've said multiple times, no matter what happens this year, we have to beat Michigan this year. Have to beat Michigan. And so the fact that this kid's already, this quarterback's already on a pretty high level is not great for us. So,
well, you know what though? Like here's the thing though that scares me about Bryce Underwood being this good and maybe Michigan starting to jump into the now with the type of modern offense that everyone kind of wants them to be. Because the last 4 years, Michigan's beaten Ohio State by being unconventional on offense, playing with a freaking fullback.
Yeah.
I mean, Ohio State's defense isn't used to seeing that. Ohio State's defense, the secondary is always really good at Ohio State, but Michigan's offense has made it so that Ohio State's secondary, which is like usually a lot of times the strength of the team, has been kind of not taken out of the game, but de-emphasized because they're just back there covering guys.
They are not just that, but they are taking them out of the game. When you take, especially last year, when Ohio State wants to run a 4-2-5 with three safeties on the field, when Michigan goes with two and three tight ends and one of them's an offensive tackle, it forced them into something they didn't want to do. What was crazy not yesterday, but last week against Texas, is Ohio State went basically bare front. I mean, they had a 50 front, a 5 with 3 down linemen, and Caden McDonald, who's 330 pounds at nose tackle, and they had 3 linebackers on the field because Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles are both 6'4", 240. And then they brought a true Mike linebacker on the field. So now they're showing like, hey, you want to go heavy? You want to bring 2 tight ends? We can play that.
Matt Patricia probably saw the film from the last 4 years of Michigan and was like, all right.
Well, he's an odd front guy.
About this.
Yeah, I mean, he's an odd front guy at heart. But they're going to be multiple. Ohio State's going to be a lot more multiple than they have been before. It's going to be really exciting. And I think they will be more equipped to stop heavy personnel than they have in the past. But that's why styles make fights, and there's a lot to be seen to see. Like the one thing I would caution is everybody's talking about how unbelievable this defense is, and how earth shattering what Patricia did was. But part of it was just following Georgia's game plan against Texas, because I don't think Texas's offense is that good. Like we're going to find out, they're not as good as everybody thinks they are. So we'll find out when they play. Ohio State doesn't have the toughest schedule in the world. We'll find out when they play Penn State. I think it'll probably be their next biggest test, and then obviously the Michigan game. So give me a fun season, man. But hey, I got to roll. I got to get to the high school football game.
I know you got to run. I
appreciate it, buddy.
That's awesome. I'm glad you jumped on. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Please like and subscribe, and we will talk to you later. Go Blue.
See you, bud.
Can I get a go Bucks? Oh,
go Bucks.
I just said that.
See you, man. All right.